Hello there, guys. Welcome back to another episode of E&Ftv. Today, we've got a very special episode because we're actually talking about an event that we're going to be doing next week at the HRC. So I want to introduce the amazing guests that we've got on today. So first off, we've got Jane Pendlebury, we've got Adrienne, Hanna, and we've got Adam Reeves. I'll let them introduce themselves properly. But yeah, I can't wait for the episode today. We're going to have a bit of a discussion on what we're going to be actually talking about next week, a bit about the event, and we hope that you'll be able to join us. So without further ado, let's kick this episode off. Adrienne, let's start with yourself.
Tom, I'm honestly really excited to be here today and even more excited to be on stage with you next week in London. It'll be a fun event. But yeah, I am the founder of a revenue management software solution called Right Revenue. We're based in Ireland, have a lot of hotels in the UK and just launching into Europe as well. But really excited to be with you guys next week.
Fantastic. Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane, CEO of Hosper. Been here before with you, Tom, and it's nice to be here. Really looking forward to seeing all three of you next week at HRC and having a bit of a chat about revenue management.
Fantastic. And Adam.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for Adrienne and Jane and Tom for inviting me on this and for inviting me next week. It is very exciting. Revenue management is it's really important to us as a business. So I'm CEO of the Robert Parker Hotel Collection, and we've got 4 hotels in the northeast of England and Scotland. I joined as a family company, and I joined at a point just before COVID, when revenue management was something that we, as a business, weren't really hot on. So we've gone through a really interesting journey of understanding how important it is, then understanding how to actually import, if you like, a revenue management function. We then have our own revenue manager, and we've joined up with Adrienne and Right Revenue to use their software. So it's been we're 4 country house hotels, and it's been a really, really interesting journey. And I think the discussion that we're going to have today and then next week is incredibly pertinent to the way we operate. So yeah, excited to be involved.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. And thank you to Jane, actually, for allowing me to be part of this panel discussion next week. It's always sort of a bit of a mesmerizing thing when I get asked to do these types of discussions with such experienced and amazing leaders, because sometimes I get a bit of imposter syndrome, if you like, but I'm very honored to be part of it. And thank you so much for having me. I suppose, Jane, then let's kick off. What are we going to be discussing next week, so we can give everybody a bit of a taste and as to why they should want to be there? Because I think that's a big thing for the revenue management community and anybody that's looking to either implement, like Adam has recently, implement a revenue management function within their business. Tell us a bit about what we're going to be touching on next week.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tom. It is a networking session. So whilst we will be the panelists and up there, we really are encouraging audience participation as well. So as much as we can get interaction. So as many people that are there that know about revenue management is better, really, as many as possible. Our title is from Adrienne, actually. I've got to credit her with this. So David Bowie said, the future belongs to those who can hear it coming. So it's just a generic conversation about revenue management, about the importance of revenue management, and then really what skills are necessary to be successful in the role, because it has changed, it has evolved. It's a very commercial role these days, which historically people have come up through the reservations path, and it's less though. That's still a route to it, but it's so much of a driven commercial role now. We're going to be discussing that. And touching on all the different skills, whether it's an art, whether it's a science, whether you need to be a leader, whether you really need to be somebody that can have great analytics and look at all those bits and pieces, or if, as I'm pretty sure it is a combination of all of those. We'll be debating whether it's head office based, if it's based on site, if there's a benefit to both of those. And if we have time, because that's quite a lot already, isn't it? If we have time, are revenue managers getting the recognition they deserve, both from a salary perspective, but also just from recognition within their own organizations? And I'm pretty sure that ranges from the extremes. Some people absolutely put all their faith in a revenue manager, and others not so much. So hopefully we'll get some feedback on that too.
Fantastic. I mean, from Adrienne and Adam's sort of perspective, because they are different from coming from different sides of this. I suppose starting with Adrienne, what is it that we're discussing about next week, or all the points, I suppose? Why are they so important now, I suppose, more than ever? Because from my perspective, everything that we're going to be discussing next week is seriously important, because the landscape is changing, which I can come on to in a little while. But yeah, why are they so important to you?
Well, I think if anyone has ever heard me speak or read anything that I've ever written, I think there's two things that come across. One, that revenue management is the best job in the world by far. Yeah. And second of all, revenue managers rule the world. And if they don't, then they should. Because it's, in my opinion, it's the one function within the hotel that has this all-seeing eye, or should have this all-seeing eye over every department. And we've talked for the 25 years I've been doing revenue, we've talked a lot about our industry working in silos and not being particularly great at communicating. And I see the revenue manager within a property almost being the orchestra, the leader of the orchestra there, and actually sitting above and understanding how every department works, and actually they're a large part of their role being now breaking down those silos. So understanding how impactful customer service has. So if you have bad TripAdvisor reviews, that impacts your ability to price. What's happening in your restaurant and your bar affects your ability to price. Your digital marketing campaign, you should be driving that. You should be driving your sales function. Like so many of us have heard stories, and I've been guilty of it myself, because I come up through a sales role and into revenue, of running off and getting a lovely piece of business from my hotel, and then realizing that actually the revenue manager doesn't want it. And that's just lack of communication and lack of understanding for that cause and effect. So I think it's really, really interesting that a revenue manager used to be this person that sat in a dark cupboard with Excel spreadsheets and lots of screens around them, where actually now they are leading the orchestra. They are conducting a lot of what's happening in the business, and that's what they should be doing. They should be there with a commercial overview over every single area of the hotel. That's my thought, and that's where we see in a lot of our hotels. That's where the really clever hotels are making a difference. They're aligned a revenue manager, that overseeing power.
No, brilliant. I guess this is going to be an opportunity, as Jane said, from such an interactive audience. We hope it's with all these different, I suppose, levels of people, but also from different perspectives. They're going to want to know, if they don't currently have a revenue function, how the heck do we go about starting that? So I think Adam's going to be a fantastic person to talk to. Obviously, I'm going to have an invested interest in that chat as well. Not going to lie. But I think that's where that is a really strong conversation to have. But also current employers of revenue managers, as you say, the expectation of a revenue manager has massively changed. And therefore, the delivery from that revenue manager needs to be represented by the salary, by the recognition, by the empowerment of that. I suppose culture always comes down to a big one as well. I was having a chat with somebody else recently, is that quite a vague question, but it hits quite hard, is what's your company culture when it comes to revenue? And a lot of people, they'll either have a very defined sort of objective of what it is or what it will be, but it's always the people that have no idea. And those are the types that really need that understanding and actually need that forum to discuss it, because it is a dark art in some ways. But of course, it can be the absolute savior in some situations. I mean, Adrienne, you and I had conversations at length during the pandemic when people were actually being taken out of the business, when they needed the revenue manager more than ever, especially within the smaller environments. And I suppose that company culture is going to be a big one for me to discuss next week, if I'm totally honest with you. Not just from a recruitment perspective, but from an internal operational perspective as well. And Adam, coming on to yourself. So in terms of what we're going to be discussing next week, again, you're coming at it from a different perspective here, but what is it about next week's discussion that you feel is so important?
Well, I mean, I think, you hit on it there with regards to culture. And I think that was the big thing when I started. And I mean, I actually I had some hospitality background, but I actually came into the business because it's a family business and I was asked to come and help. So I came from a very different perspective. I came in understanding that we were weak on sales. I didn't come from hotels. I didn't come from hospitality. So I didn't actually even know a revenue manager was a thing until I started. But very, very quickly, I realized that now with the digital age, that we needed to catch up, and our revenue management had to be so important. But also, and going back to some of the things Adrienne was saying, is that we're a country house hotel. Every single one is a country house hotel. It's F&B led, it's package led, it's experience led. And fundamentally, therefore, it can't just be one element. So it can't just be room rate, it can't just be occupancy. It's really important that we're balancing that with getting people into the door, with selling everything else, with upselling. So, our revenue management function is really important that they have a handle on. And Nicola, our revenue manager, has an input into all sorts of things, from deciding what software we go with, deciding what for the guest journey from start to finish. They need to understand the whole element from start to finish, because everything they do impacts. And general managers will always have an input based on what the hotel operationally can do, and so there's so much for that person to be involved in and to understand. And actually, Nicola didn't come from a revenue management background, and again, that was really interesting. She came more from a sales background, and the link up, and she was going to come in as a marketing person. But fundamentally, due to changes in the business, which we can talk about more next week, moved more into the revenue function, and I think that route was really interesting. And she works very closely with our marketing manager, very closely. And actually, the fundamentals of the kind of Excel spreadsheet element that basically Right Revenue do for us now allows Nicola to have that much more rounded feel and to be the communicator between what's happening on the TAs or online and the hotel teams, and making sure that all of those communications are open. So it's a huge role. It's a massive role, and like I say, at the start, I was just aware that we weren't doing it brilliantly. I think we are now. She's just one of the board, so we're doing something. But yeah, I mean, it's been really exciting for me to go from really being quite naive and to building our revenue function to where we are now, but understanding exactly as Adrienne said, how rounded that person needs to be, and fundamentally sit almost as one of our general managers. So you've got general managers operating hotels, and you've got one general manager operating the revenue, and I think that's really key and really important.
I think next week you might want to get yourself ready, because I think you're going to have a lot of questions coming at you next week. I think me less so, but no, I think from my perspective, as I say, the landscape of where revenue management is at the moment within the recruitment market, what people are looking for, but also what the revenue managers are looking for, is something that I'm looking forward to touching on, because it has changed, and it is, and I've said this on this channel before, it is a bit of a wild west out there. So for anybody that is looking for revenue managers or looking to establish a revenue management function, I think it's going to be very good for them to understand where exactly the market is, because I think it's quite difficult to gauge it without talking to somebody that's not I suppose, part of a certain organization. I'm quite nicely in the middle of everything. So we see the movements. We see if centralization is better than, better for certain circumstances than being on property. We'll see if siloing is the thing of the past, or if it's still kicking around in some environments where it really shouldn't. These are the types of conversations that I think people really need to hear when it comes to revenue. And the fact that we're touching on all of them is a beautiful thing. My only problem is that, as you could probably tell already, I could go on about it all bloody day. So hopefully we try and stick to time, but I'll leave that one to Jane to try and keep us on track.
yes, I should be very strict, obviously.
No, exactly that. And I guess from your perspective, Jane, because again, Hosper as an organization, obviously we've got a long-standing relationship, but it's got the training and development side of things, but you're also very well connected with where the market is. So I suppose, what is it about the discussion points that you feel quite strongly about, and what you're looking forward to discussing next week.
I think Adrienne and I met through revenue management a very long time ago, didn't we? Beginning of the century. And I think the changing role is probably the most interesting part, how it has changed and how our understanding has changed, and how it's a brilliant subject because you never know it all. There's always something new to learn, and I think that is just what makes it so exciting. And as Adrienne says, what a brilliant it's just part of what we do at hospital, but it's a big part of my background, revenue management, and sure. I love it as a topic, and I really admire people who can have it as a career, because I think that they are in many ways undervalued, and I think it's quite important that we do value them all round.
No, fantastic. Well, I've never been to the HRC before, if I'm totally honest with you. So it's going to be a brand new thing for me. Jane, do you have an idea of who and what types of people will be coming to this event? Because obviously we're shouting out here for revenue managers, people that are interested in revenue, or employers of revenue managers, or people that are looking to set up functions to come along, and we'll be pushing that throughout the next week. But who else do you think will be there?
It's a very varied audience or delegates. It's what used to be known as Hotel Olympia. It's rebranded years ago now. So it's what was Hotel Olympia, but it's at Excel. Don't go to Olympia. It will be very varied. There will be food and beverage people there, but that's also another crucial part of revenue management that we are now embracing into revenue management, which, again, going back sort of 15 years, nobody really even talked about it. It was all bedroom revenue, whereas now we are looking at the whole bigger picture. It'll be a diverse group, but on the Tuesday, I think especially is going to be the most relevant one for hoteliers and commercial people. I'm actually doing two. I'm doing this one, which I think will be fascinating, but I'm doing another one later in the afternoon about the digital worker, coming at it not so much from revenue management, but as just the technology to pin all the different pieces together using robotic process automation. So there's lots of different things that will appeal to hoteliers, commercial leaders in any hospitality setting.
Fantastic. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm really excited about next week. I'm looking forward to sharing the stage with all of you. As I say, I'll provide a link to anybody that wants to register for the event down below. Let us know if you've got any questions. I'll answer whatever I can, but I'll probably refer you to Jane. But whatever we can answer for you, we will. But I hope that you can join us next week, because we are wanting an interactive session where we can have a really good discussion, maybe touch on various challenges that are going on in the market and see how we can overcome them. And of course, if anybody wants to talk to any of us, I imagine after the discussion itself, I'm sure we'd all love to. I want to just say a big thank you to all of you, because I know how busy we all are. But I like the fact that we've been able to come together beforehand. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. As I say, I'll leave a link below for you to register for the event next week. Don't forget to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much, guys. Bye-bye.